Tasmania, the hidden island at the edge of the world. A place exists where the air feels older than time itself, where forests have been growing since before humans built cities, and where the edge of the world does not feel like a metaphor, it feels real. That place is Tasmania. And here is the strange part. Despite being one of the most untouched and visually unreal places on Earth, most people barely talk about it. It sits quietly below Australia, separated by a stretch of ocean that feels more like a barrier between two different worlds than just water. But the moment you start exploring it, everything changes. The landscapes do not just look different, they feel different. The silence hits differently. Even the light feels softer, like it is trying not to disturb something ancient. And that is exactly what makes Tasmania so addictive. It does not try to impress you, it just exists, and somehow that is enough. Cradle Mountain. There is a moment when standing in front of Cradle Mountain where everything just goes quiet. Not because there is no sound, but because the place demands attention without asking for it. The jagged peaks rise out of the earth like something unfinished, like nature paused mid-creation and never came back to smooth the edges. And the lake beneath it reflects the sky so perfectly that it feels like the ground has disappeared. People expect mountains to be dramatic, but this is different. This feels personal, the kind of place that makes people question why they ever rush through life in the first place. It is not always sunny, not always clear, and honestly, that unpredictability is what makes it even more powerful. Clouds roll in fast, winds shift suddenly, and instead of ruining the experience, it turns the entire landscape into something alive. Standing there, it becomes obvious why this place is not just visited, but remembered. Freycinet National Park. At first glance, Freycinet National Park looks almost too perfect to be real, the kind of place that looks edited even when it is not. White sand beaches curve around bright blue water, and the contrast is so sharp that it almost feels artificial. But then the wind hits, the waves move unpredictably, and suddenly it becomes clear this is not a postcard. It is something far more raw. The famous Wineglass Bay pulls people in with its shape, but what keeps them there is the feeling of isolation. It is beautiful, yes, but it is also quiet in a way that makes people slightly uncomfortable at first. There is no city noise, no distractions, just the sound of water and wind. And that silence forces a kind of awareness that most people are not used to anymore. It is not about escaping the world. It is about realizing how loud the world usually is. Bay of Fires. The name Bay of Fires sounds intense, almost dangerous, but the reality is something completely unexpected. Instead of flames, there are orange-covered rocks scattered across white beaches, glowing under sunlight like they are lit from within. It feels surreal, like someone painted the coastline instead of nature forming it over time. But the real impact of this place is not just visual, it is the contrast. The ocean looks calm one second and wild the next. The sky shifts from soft blue to heavy gray without warning. And through all of that, the landscape stays still, almost indifferent. It creates this strange balance between peace and unpredictability. People often come here expecting a relaxing beach experience, but leave with something deeper, a kind of respect for how unpredictable beauty can be when it is completely untouched. Port Arthur. There is a completely different side of Tasmania that does not rely on landscapes to leave an impression. Port Arthur carries a weight that is hard to ignore the moment it comes into view. What looks like a peaceful historical site at first slowly reveals a much darker past. This was once a penal settlement, a place where isolation was used as punishment long before modern systems existed. And that sense of isolation still lingers. The buildings are quiet, almost too quiet, and walking through them feels less like exploring history and more like stepping into something unfinished. It is not overwhelming in an obvious way, but there is a subtle heaviness that builds the longer you stay. And yet, that is exactly why it matters. It is not just about seeing something old, it is about understanding how far things have come and how places like this shape the world people live in today. Tasmanian wilderness. Nearly half of Tasmanian wilderness is protected land, and that fact alone changes how the entire island feels. This is not a place where nature exists around people. It is a place where people exist inside nature. The forests are dense, the rivers move freely, and there are areas where human presence feels almost out of place. Walking through these regions does not feel like a typical outdoor experience. It feels like entering something that has been running perfectly fine without humans for thousands of years. There are no shortcuts here, no artificial paths designed for convenience. Everything feels earned. And that effort creates a deeper connection, something that cannot be replicated in more developed destinations. It is not about comfort, it is about authenticity. Hobart. Then there is Hobart, a city that somehow manages to feel modern and historic at the same time without forcing either identity. Sitting along the waterfront, it carries a calm energy that feels completely different from major cities. Life moves slower here, but not in a lazy way, in a deliberate way. The markets, the streets, even the architecture reflect a place that is not trying to compete with the rest of the world. And that is exactly what makes it stand out. And it feels grounded. There is culture, there is creativity, but nothing feels rushed or overdone. It is the kind of place where people start noticing small details again. The way light hits buildings, the way conversations happen without urgency. It is not trying to impress anyone, and that confidence makes it unforgettable. Mount Wellington. Looking over Hobart is Mount Wellington, and reaching the top feels less like a hike and more like stepping into a completely different climate. Down in the city, things feel calm and predictable. But up here, the weather changes quickly. The air feels sharper, and the view stretches out in a way that makes everything below seem distant. It creates a strange shift in perspective. Problems that felt important in the city suddenly feel small, almost irrelevant. And that is something people do not expect from a place like this. It is not just about the view, it is about what the view does to the way people think. The higher you go, the more everything simplifies. Maria Island. Maria Island feels like stepping into a version of the world that decided to slow down permanently. There are no cars, no crowded streets, just open landscapes and wildlife moving freely without fear. It creates a sense of calm that feels almost unnatural at first, like something is missing. But then it becomes clear that nothing is missing. Things are just quieter. The history here blends with nature in a way that does not feel forced. Old ruins sit among green fields, and instead of standing out, they feel like part of the environment. It is not dramatic or overwhelming, but it stays with people longer than expected. Bruny Island. There is something about Bruny Island that feels raw in a completely different way. The landscapes shift quickly from calm beaches to rugged cliffs, and that constant change keeps the experience unpredictable. It does not give people time to get comfortable, and that is exactly what makes it memorable. One moment feels peaceful, the next feels intense, and somehow it all fits together. It creates a rhythm that is hard to explain but easy to feel. And that unpredictability becomes part of the experience rather than something to avoid. Tasman Peninsula. Finally, Tasman Peninsula brings everything together in a way that feels almost cinematic. Massive sea cliffs drop into powerful waves, and the scale of it all makes people feel small in the best way possible. It is not about fear, it is about perspective. And the ocean does not look calm here. It looks powerful, constant, and completely indifferent. And watching it crash against the cliffs over and over again creates a kind of respect that does not come from reading about nature, but from seeing it up close. It is a reminder that some places are not meant to be controlled or shaped. They are meant to be experienced exactly as they are. Gordon River. There is something almost hypnotic about the way the Gordon River moves. Not fast, not aggressive, just steady and dark, like it is carrying stories instead of water. The surface often looks like glass, reflecting the surrounding wilderness so perfectly that it becomes difficult to tell where reality ends and reflection begins. And then, without warning, the mood shifts. The light changes, the water deepens in color, and suddenly the entire river feels heavier, more mysterious. It is not the kind of place that overwhelms instantly. It pulls people in slowly, almost quietly. Boats move through it like they are not meant to disturb anything, and that feeling stays consistent throughout the experience. There is a sense that this river has seen more than it reveals, and that silence becomes part of its identity. It is not dramatic in the way oceans or mountains are, but it leaves a lasting impression that builds over time rather than hitting all at once. Lake St. Clair. At first, Lake St. Clair seems like just another peaceful body of water, but the longer it is observed, the more it reveals. This is the deepest freshwater lake in Australia, and that depth is not just a statistic, it is something that can be felt. The water appears calm on the surface, but there is a weight beneath it that creates a completely different atmosphere. The surrounding mountains frame it in a way that makes everything feel enclosed, almost protected, yet slightly isolated. It is the kind of place where time feels slower, where even simple movements like ripples in the water become noticeable. The stillness is not empty, it is full of subtle detail that most people would normally ignore. And that is where its real impact lies. It does not demand attention, it earns it gradually, drawing people into a quieter, more focused state without them even realizing it. Strahan. The small town of Strahan does not try to stand out, and yet it ends up doing exactly that. Sitting on the edge of the wilderness, it feels like a transition point between human life and something far more untamed. The harbor is calm, almost deceptively so, especially when compared to the powerful landscape surrounding it. There is a sense of simplicity here that feels intentional rather than limited. Life moves without urgency, and that creates a completely different rhythm compared to larger cities. But what makes Strahan memorable is not just its appearance, it is its position. It feels like the last comfortable stop before things become more unpredictable. And that contrast gives it a quiet importance. It is not the destination that overwhelms, it is the place that prepares people for everything that comes next. Richmond. Walking through Richmond feels less like visiting a town and more like stepping into a preserved moment in time. The streets, the buildings, even the atmosphere carry a consistency that is hard to find elsewhere. Nothing feels rushed, or nothing feels out of place. And at the center of it all is the Richmond Bridge, standing as a reminder of how long this place has existed without needing to change much at all. There is a kind of quiet confidence in that. It does not rely on modern attractions or constant updates to stay relevant. Instead, it offers something that feels increasingly rare: stability. But that does not mean it feels outdated. It feels grounded. And that grounding creates a connection that goes beyond simple sightseeing. It becomes less about what there is to see and more about how the place makes people feel while they are there. Wineglass Bay, Lookout. Reaching the Wineglass Bay. Lookout is not just about the view at the top, it is about everything that builds up to it. The walk itself creates anticipation, and with every step, the landscape begins to open up in small, controlled glimpses. Then suddenly, it all reveals itself at once. The curve of the bay, the brightness of the water, the sharp contrast between land and sea. It feels almost too balanced to be natural. But what makes this place stand out is not just its beauty. It is the perspective it offers. From above, everything looks calm, almost perfectly arranged. But that distance also creates a sense of detachment, a reminder that what looks peaceful from afar can feel completely different up close. And that contrast adds depth to the experience, turning a simple viewpoint into something far more layered. Hastings Caves. Beneath the surface of Tasmania lies a completely different world, and Hastings Caves is one of the clearest entrances into it. Stepping inside changes everything instantly, and the air feels cooler, heavier, and the silence becomes more noticeable. The formations inside do not look rushed or chaotic. They look deliberate, shaped slowly over thousands of years. And that slow formation becomes part of the experience. It creates an awareness of time that is difficult to grasp on the surface. Nothing here feels temporary. Everything feels like it has been waiting. The lighting reveals just enough to guide the way, but never enough to remove the sense of mystery completely. And that balance keeps the experience engaging from start to finish. It is not overwhelming in scale, but it is deeply immersive in a way that stays with people long after they leave. Huon Valley. The Huon Valley carries a different kind of energy compared to the more rugged parts of the island. It feels softer, more open, yet still deeply connected to nature. Rolling hills, orchards, and quiet roads create a landscape that feels lived in rather than untouched. But that does not make it any less impactful. In fact, it creates a different kind of connection. Instead of feeling like a visitor in a wild environment, people feel like they are part of something ongoing. There is a rhythm here that comes from daily life, from seasons changing, from growth happening gradually rather than suddenly. And that consistency becomes its strength. It offers a balance that the rest of Tasmania does not always provide, a place where nature and human life exist side by side without one overpowering the other. Mount Field National Park. Mount Field National Park feels like multiple environments layered into one space. Dense forests, tall trees, and waterfalls that seem to appear without warning create a landscape that constantly shifts as people move through it. And that constant change keeps the experience dynamic. One moment feels enclosed and quiet, the next feels open and expansive. The Russell Falls in particular stand out not just for their appearance but for how naturally they fit into the surroundings. Nothing feels forced or exaggerated. It all feels balanced, like each element knows exactly where it belongs. And that balance creates a sense of flow that carries through the entire park. It is not about one standout feature. It is about how everything connects together seamlessly. Tasman Bridge. Crossing the Tasman Bridge might seem like a simple experience, but it offers a perspective that is easy to overlook. The city, the river, and the surrounding hills all come into view at once, creating a snapshot of how everything fits together. It is not dramatic in the way natural landmarks are, but it provides context. It shows how Hobart exists within its environment rather than separate from it. And that connection becomes more noticeable the more it is observed. It is a reminder that even within developed spaces, the influence of the natural landscape is still present. The bridge does not dominate the view, it frames it. And that subtle role makes it more significant than it initially appears. Southwest National Park. At the far edge of Tasmania lies Southwest National Park, and this is where the idea of isolation becomes fully real. This is not a place that feels accessible or controlled. It feels distant, vast, and completely indifferent to human presence. The landscapes stretch out in ways that make distances feel larger than they actually are. Weather shifts without warning. Terrain changes quickly, and everything about it reinforces the idea that this place operates on its own terms. But that is exactly what makes it so powerful. It offers something that very few places still can: true remoteness. And experiencing that creates a different kind of awareness. It is not about comfort or convenience. It is about understanding what the world looks like when it is left alone. And once that is experienced, it becomes difficult to see other places in the same way again. Bridestowe Lavender Estate. There is a moment during certain months when Bridestowe Lavender Estate stops feeling like a real place and starts looking like something imagined. Endless rows of purple stretch across the land in perfect alignment, creating a pattern that feels almost too precise to be natural. But then the wind moves through it, breaking that perfection just enough to remind that this is not staged, it is alive. The scent fills the air in a way that is impossible to ignore, subtle at first, then suddenly everywhere. It is not overwhelming, but it changes how the entire environment feels. People often expect it to be just visually appealing, but the experience is much deeper than that. The scale, the color, the atmosphere, it all combines into something that feels strangely calming yet slightly surreal. And that contrast is what makes it memorable, not just as a place to see, but as something to fully experience. Cataract Gorge. Right on the edge of Launceston sits Cataract Gorge. And the first reaction most people have is confusion. How does something this raw exist so close to a city? One moment there are streets and buildings, and the next there are cliffs, water, and a landscape that feels completely disconnected from urban life. The transition is almost immediate, and that sudden shift is what makes it stand out. Walking through the area feels like moving between two different realities without any clear boundary separating them. The river cuts through the gorge with a quiet force, not aggressive, but constant. And above it all, the cliffs create a sense of scale that feels larger than expected. It is not about escaping the city, it is about realizing how close something wild can exist without being fully noticed. Stanley and The Nut. The small coastal town of Stanley carries a calm, almost timeless feeling. But rising above it is something that completely shifts the perspective. The Nut. This massive volcanic formation does not blend into the background, it dominates it. And yet, it does not feel out of place. It feels like it has always been there, quietly shaping everything around it. From the top, the view stretches out across the ocean and the town below, creating a contrast between something solid and something constantly moving. The ocean never stays the same, but the Nut does. And that difference becomes more noticeable the longer it is observed. It creates a balance between change and stability that feels almost symbolic, even without trying to be. Derwent Valley. The Derwent Valley offers a different perspective on Tasmania, one that feels less dramatic at first but reveals more over time. Wide open spaces, flowing rivers, and quiet towns create an environment that feels steady and consistent. But that consistency is not boring, it is grounding. It provides a break from the intensity of cliffs and rugged coastlines, allowing a different kind of appreciation to develop. The river moves through the valley with a calm confidence, not rushing, not forcing anything. And that pace becomes part of the experience. It is a reminder that not everything needs to be extreme to be meaningful. Sometimes it is the quieter places that leave the strongest impression, simply because they give people the space to notice more. Franklin River. There are rivers that are meant to be seen, and then there are rivers like the Franklin River that feel like they are meant to be understood. This is not a controlled or predictable environment. The water moves with purpose, or cutting through the wilderness in a way that feels both natural and powerful. It is not calm like Gordon River, and that difference is immediately noticeable. There is an energy here that feels constant, something that does not settle or slow down easily. And that energy creates a completely different experience. It demands attention, not through noise, but through movement. Every turn reveals something slightly different, and that unpredictability keeps the entire journey engaging. It is not just about where the river goes, it is about how it gets there. Tasman Arch and Devil Kitchen. Along the rugged coastline of Tasman Peninsula, formations like Tasman Arch and Devil's Kitchen feel like nature experimenting with structure and scale. These are not soft or subtle landscapes. They are sharp, defined, and shaped by constant interaction with the ocean. Waves crash below with a force that feels repetitive but never identical, slowly carving the rock into forms that look almost intentional. Standing near these formations creates a sense of distance from everything else, not physical distance but mental distance. King Island. Further out, separated even from Tasmania itself, lies King Island, and this is where isolation takes on a completely different meaning. This is not just quiet, it is distant. The landscapes feel open in a way that is almost endless, with coastlines that stretch without interruption. The wind becomes a constant presence, shaping not just the environment but the entire experience. It is not something that fades into the background, it becomes part of how the place is understood. And that constant movement creates a dynamic that feels both challenging and captivating at the same time. It is not a place that tries to accommodate expectations. Flinders Island. Then there is Flinders Island, where the balance between land, sea, and sky feels almost perfectly aligned. The colors shift constantly depending on light, creating a landscape that never looks exactly the same twice. Granite peaks rise from the ground with a quiet strength, while the surrounding beaches remain open and soft. It is a contrast that works without conflict, each element supporting the other rather than competing. And that harmony creates a sense of completeness that is difficult to describe. Museum of Old and New Art. In contrast to all the natural landscapes, a museum of old and new art in Hobart introduces a completely different kind of exploration. This is not about nature or history in a traditional sense. It is about perspective. The museum challenges expectations, not by being chaotic, but by presenting ideas in ways that are unexpected. Moving through it feels less like following a path and more like navigating a series of thoughts. Each space leads into another without clear transitions, creating an experience that feels fluid rather than structured. It does not tell people what to think, it gives them something to think about. Cape Raoul. At the edge of the land, Cape Raoul offers one of the most striking coastal experiences in Tasmania. The cliffs rise sharply, creating vertical lines that feel almost too clean to be natural. And below them, the ocean moves with a force that feels constant and unchanging. The combination creates a scene that feels both stable and intense at the same time. Standing there, it becomes clear that this is not just about the view, It is about the scale of everything. The height of the cliffs, the depth of the ocean, the distance to the horizon. It all comes together in a way that shifts perspective instantly. And that shift is what stays with people long after they leave. Tasmania is not trying to be the most popular destination in the world. It is not chasing attention, and maybe that is exactly why it feels so different. It offers something that is becoming rare. Places that still feel untouched, experiences that still feel real, and moments that do not need to be shared to matter. And once someone experiences that, it becomes very hard to go back to anything less.